So today's webinar is about the common challenges of user adoption, and of course why it is that we should care about them. There's quite a couple of things that we'll be going through, and course is going to be on end user training. So just to give you a bit of intro, the two of us webinar today are basically from the Skype all the way from South Africa. Juicy Mori as well. I just want to check. Juicy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I think I've dropped Juicy again. This seems like this is something we're going to do quite often. So Juicy and I'm both MVPs, very passionate about what we do, and we have a common interest is helping user adoption. We met in Monaco, so we've been chatting and said let's try and do some things together the way the world sees, and that's absolutely why we're here and doing this webinar today. Being part of the webinar, I'll just take a little bit of time going through the content that we'll be covering, but then people time to join as well. But thanks for being here, and I do hope that you'll get a lot of value from. And of course, remember that you can ask questions, and we'll try our best to actually answer them, get back to you. And as always, when I do webinars, I remind everyone that if we did reach out to our Twitter and answer some of your questions there as well. Today's topic eruption, of course, is looking at the common challenges when implementing new solutions. So that's one of the first ones, and we're talking about what can go wrong on projects. We're going to take a look at what is user adoption as well. I'm going to be talking about change, and I'm hopefully in there soon. I'd love to have a conversation with him as well. And then we're going to look at the ROI on training. I think that's one of the most difficult things, you know, that companies to actually calculate is that it's not a very tangible thing to do. And then training methods and the purpose of training, of course, is something very, very important for me. Before I go on, I'm going to just do a check on the webinar side. So I just want to confirm, Asta, that you can still hear me and you can see my screen.
Yes, I can hear you, and Jussi can hear you as well, but probably you don't hear Jussi for some reason.
I'm not here.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. And everyone, a round of applause, please. Can everyone that's on the call, please just give
Webinar Jam doesn't like me at all.
so Juicy, just to catch you up, I'm sure you've heard some of it. I've gone through what the different sections is that we're going to be covering. As always, I have a lot to say, so I think with letting me talk about what I'm passionate about, but we want this to be an interactive webinar, and I'm quite okay with Juicy jumping in at any point of time and asking questions, and that's having a conversation and actually trying to share with you what we think is important. So anything you wanted to add before I jump into the first section, Juicy?
Yeah, so thanks a lot for the intro that when the technology isn't working. but yeah, as Tracy already said, we both are really passionate about the topic user adoption, and we really want to raise awareness of this topic in the industry right now, and therefore we have started this this webinar now. It's now the second what we conduct over that topic, so there will be more coming in the next year. And hopefully we can find a more stable technology to host those webinars in the future. Anyway, so in this presentation, as Tracy said, we will have a conversation now more around the return on investment on end user training. So how can you drive ROI, and actually how is ROI actually measured? And Tracy has some very interesting insights on the topic. The first time I saw it on the SharePoint Saturday Monaco when I attended Tracy's session, and I thought, okay, this is a very good topic to have actually in this webinar here today. Okay, but I would say let's get started.
Cool, thank you, Juicy. I just want to add something to what you just said. mentioned that we're very passionate about. We both think user adoption got the attention it deserved, or not so much user adoption. I don't think the underlying things that sits and helps and supports isn't recognized like it should. And the campaign to create awareness around it in the world. And it reminds me of this beautiful quote that says, I don't even know, but it's all about the change you want to see in the world. And I think that's what Josie and I'm trying to do, is that recent saying, you know, we want to be leaders and we want to help people to take that first step. So yes, so let's start with the basics. I think the first thing, and that's around the common challenges when implementing new solutions. So the topic of user adoption always comes up in weeks, okay? And remember, this is not just IT related. I mean, user adoption is whether someone's using products, food, or new range of clothes or something. So user adoption is much technology, but something that a lot of those projects has in common would be, and now of course I'm going to 100 things that connect projects. We're definitely not going to go through all of them. I'm sure if you start asking people what they think has gone wrong, will come up with a lot of excuses. Of course, not a lot of. So, definitely, if you go and read up, there's a lot of white papers out there, a lot of good articles out there. Projects fail, and a lot of the things that comes up is of course, and lack of documentation, and then low user adoption. So low user adoption, I don't really see that as the reason for it failing, but that's the result of it. It's failing, it leads to low user adoption. But also around project.
So,
I mean, what are
Tracy, here a question. So about projects in general. I mean, this is quite a broad question, but what makes projects fail when it comes to really adopt end users adopting to new software or projects? Is it more like how to say, wrong training materials, wrong training methods? Is there not enough energy put in that type of area, or in your experience, what do you think? What makes this fail, or what makes projects fail?
I definitely think this is a difficult question, actually. So that's you throwing questions right back at me, but I suppose that's how these things happen. But I have to take a project team, and you have to take the project manager, and you take the change management person, and the trainer, and courses, etc. I think all of them will bring up a reason that's based on their side of the sense, or maybe everyone else blames everyone else. Mm-hmm. So it might be that the reason that I see as one of the biggest failing points might be because it's from my perspective, and it's the side that I work in most. Because very easily be, if I think South Africa, that the biggest reason for project and bandwidth. Okay, so that's a technical statement to make, but if I have to take a step back, and in my experience, the biggest reason for projects failing is definitely on the change management side. I do think that communicating projects well enough, we're not well enough. Now remember, chemistry. I'm not just talking about communication live. I'm also talking about, before we go live, are we involving the right parties on a project? So the communication portion of change management is very, very important for me. And of course, training for me is a type of communication. It's just, so it's actually all communication. There's that silly, lingo that they use where they say communication is key, but it's very true because it does affect everything, whether we're asking the right questions or not. Are we talking to the right people? Do we have the right stakeholders on the project? Are we communicating the project? But then also, because training is a form of communication, it also means, are we bringing the message across right is right, and that's the biggest thing for me why projects fail.
Yeah, very good. If I may add something here, what I also see, it has also a lot to do with the culture of the company. I heard a very
Absolutely.
good saying. I heard a very good saying a few days ago that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and this
That's
is
it. I've heard it as well.
so true. I mean, you can put in a lot of strategies about how to address training, how to address communication. You can do a strategy of implementing super users. You can have like e-learning portals. You can create videos and so on. But if the company doesn't support training or exactly learning by failure and going forward as a cultural thing, then end users will just not start learning by themselves, not start to try out things.
Yeah.
No. So that's, in my point of view, also a very, very important. Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, that's all what I wanted to say. You can go on.
I think if I can add to that, because of course you're right. I mean, culture is the big strategy for breakfast, but the interesting thing is when you look at culture and you look at communication. If I had to point that out or single that out, is because correct communication changes culture.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of the same thing. The correct communication and training actually changes culture and actually helps us then. So maybe they're hand in hand. Maybe it's the one feeds off the other one.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I'm getting dizzy looking at all these problems why projects fail. So I'm going to be moving on. So I think we all have our reasons for projects failing, and there's hundreds of them out there. But take note of culture, as we said, very importantly, and communicate better. But communication is a problem in companies, whether you're doing projects or not. And that's most probably because of lack of communication, have bad culture. That's how we should sum up. Yeah. Okay, so me as I just want to run through user adoption. Now, that's also one of those buzzwords out there that like collaboration, I'd say. I don't know, bingo card that I made, Juicy.
Yeah.
Well,
so in your words, what is user adoption? Yeah.
So for me, and I am going to go onto the next screen. So if you had to just go and search for what user adoption is, this is the normal term to get, and they say that it's the effective use of an interactive system by its users to the full advantage of the business. Now I've changed this.
Okay.
Because
now I'm curious.
I feel it shouldn't just be to the advantage of the business. It should actually be to advantage of the business and the users, because enabled users.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it should actually be the other way around, that the full advantage of the users, and when this happens, it also creates advantage.
It leads to business.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's why it was so important for me to add that bit, because I really felt that was lacking. If you at why we do it, of course, to save money and to have more efficient process, but it should also be to help users be more efficient, which actually creates more efficient process. Maybe a bit of the focus on users isn't where it should be, right?
Yeah.
But user adoption at the end of the day, and I think we both agree to it, is wanting users to use your system because it makes their lives easier. Adoption in a nutshell. Cool. So that management is one of those scary topics like governance. It's one of those things that normally doesn't get discussed and I could understand what change management is about. So if I think of change management, now change, of course, it consists of planning, execution, the measurement, the correction of actions to assist with change, right? So change management works around managing the changes. Project works around the administrative side of the projects, managing all of those things and the measurements of deliverables, etc. So the main for me of communication and training. Again, I'm saying training is a form of communication. The two most important things for me that sits into communication and training, that I don't think these are receiving the attention and the resources they deserve. And funny enough, this is normally the first areas where they cut costs on projects. I don't know if you experience the same, Josie, on projects that you've been on?
There was an interesting comment from one of our visitors. They were saying when it comes to change that, or actually why projects fail is that due to resistance to change, saying 80% of that is an issue, and the lack of resources about 20%. It's an interesting quote, and I think the resistance to change is something what change management should address. So, or should actually put the most effort in that. How can we address change resistance, and how can we turn this change resistance into enthusiasm, and actually to build up this way of learning, and actually to educate people that change is nothing bad, that actually the only constant in life is change, and that people can adapt to the new ways of work, to the new technology, that it actually helps them to be more productive and actually have better output and so on. So in that way,
it's definitely about
what change management should actually do is to really address the problem of change resistance.
Yeah. But if you think, I mean, there's a lot of quotes out there and a lot of methodologies, but everyone agrees that we should be spending 80% of our time on planning. You see project and change management as planning, then we're actually saying that those two things should form 80% of your bold design at 20%. But you're right, they're definitely not doing those. So we'll have to fight a bit harder to get that awareness up, right? Okay.
Yeah. So there was another
cool.
question.
The next one up. Yes.
Another question was, okay, we were saying about what is user adoption when we Google it or the term from Wikipedia. But what is it in our point of view? So what do we think is user adoption in our own words? Do you want to start, Tracy?
Own words. I definitely do. User adoption is when someone uses a new system because they understand the purpose of it and they're enabled by it. So that's the user that they adopt because they understand the need and the purpose for it, and it does make their life easier. Of course, user adoption, there can be a lot of measurement behind it. So people can say that, okay, if 80% of your users are using Microsoft Teams, then that's user adoption. So I'm not really looking at the measurement side. I'm looking at how people actually feel towards technology, and if they honestly feel that technology is fair.
Yeah. That's very good. Thanks. Yeah. In my point of view, it's a very, very difficult question, but to answer it in a way that user adoption can be described not as let's say a one-time thing. It's more like a journey for an individual to start coping and start to live with a new process or a new application which helps them to perform a certain task or to excel even in certain tasks. And
absolutely,
this whole thing is divided in different phases. I always talk about those 4 phases of user adoption. So the first one is the discovery phase, where the user needs to figure out how quickly as possible is this of certain value for me. Value can be something, a value for my time management or for the business to create more money, or even for entertainment. So look in the gaming business, for instance. People need to nowadays decide within a few minutes if they want to play that game or not. This has a lot to do with user adoption. And it's a totally different thing of user adoption when you look at the person working with the software in the first few minutes or after a few months. So in that way, user adoption is a very dynamic thing. You cannot go and say, okay, training is user adoption. It's just a part of the whole work. But it has a lot of, it's a lot of, so just answering in one sentence, I'm afraid I cannot really do that. But more like user adoption is a journey, and the whole journey needs to be somehow moderated and somehow supported by the organization. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, and I actually quoted that in an article I wrote a while back, but a friend of mine, Kate Alfick, always says that user adoption for her, something is easy to use, and the user understands why he's using it, and the system makes him feel good. So systems makes us feel good if we're enabled and it's easy to use. So for me, that's always been such a nice summary of what user adoption is.
Absolutely, feeling
cool.
So, a lot of stuff, or feelings of users or humans have a very big impact on user adoption and user acceptance. We always say you should not make users feel stupid when they start using a tool. If they
absolutely.
Stupid, you have lost. so yeah.
Absolutely,
okay,
I agree.
Let's go on. Yeah.
Cool. So this area I wanted to, and I mean, we've had a lot of actually the ROI on training. Now, I'm pretty sure this webinar gets recorded, and am I right if I say that?
Yeah,
people can get access to the details, but maybe Jussi, maybe we can do a follow-up blog on this and share, you know, the spreadsheet with the calculations or something that's maybe for guys to use. Yeah, so I think that's a cool idea to actually give you guys, because then you can use the calculator to go and determine this. Now, if I think of the ROI of thing to establish, because it's not a number of users or a number of hours or something, so it's not tangible, and this has always been very, very difficult to calculate. And for years when I was on projects, I did not calculate the ROI on pretty much nothing. I couldn't even calculate the ROI on little systems that I'd installed, because I think I'm a bit of a OCD. Problem with that is that we want the 100% numbers. So people that are perfectionists, they don't want to get the kind of a 60% number, they just want the 100%. So what ends up happening is that we never get either. And I, at some point, and I'm sure it's got something older, realized I'd rather have my 60% figures than have nothing. So I started calculating ROI on the stuff that I had access to, and I stopped worrying about the stuff I couldn't measure. Because people would measure the used on papers, how many papers you use, how many hours are spent, and that just gets crazy. So this is a very, very basic with you. And before I go into that, I'd like to just remind everyone that I've spoken about quite a lot. I just want to take a step back before I talk about the ROI around the skilled users. Digital literacy is something very, very important to me. So if you want to measure ROI on training, be careful measuring. Because if it's not enough, then you're still not going to get or achieve what it is that you want to achieve. So for me, digital literacy is the ability to effectively and critically navigate, evaluate, and create information. So using the wide array of technologies. And they say that it requires one to recognize and using that's very lacking is that we don't always even understand what the capabilities are that we have with certain technologies. Now, for ROI calculator, this is actually the statistics I use to calculate, able to refer to a statistic somewhere. I mean, we don't just trust each other. I've known for years that the PC literacy in companies are very, very low. Companies think that it's high because they say when people apply for a job, they actually say that they are PC literate, and we all know that that is not the case. Just come across, all the details can be found on the site as well. So it was done over a couple of years, 215,000 people. And what they kind of estimated, and I didn't add all the details in the slide deck now, but we can definitely share it afterwards, is that if you look at these levels, say, for example, the last 25% would be medium and strong users. Now, these medium and strong users are people that kind of can help themselves. I'm saying kind of, okay? This is someone who tell, and if he has to use PowerPoint, it'll be okay. If you go and look at the statistics there, you'll be shocked at what they actually tested and measured them against. That 75% of our force really isn't PC literate, even though we think that they are. And the impact that has on the user adoption is, of course, massive. So this is the statistic that I used for the ROI calculator. I'm going to move on and just give you the rest of the research that I did later. So that actually gave some results back that said PC literacy training could help people gain 33 minutes of productive time a day. Oh, wow, I can tell you that it's a lot more than that. It's a lot more than that, Juicy, I can promise you. But for the calculator, I stuck to that so I could get out there. I can promise you, if I spend a half an hour with a class of users and I teach them how to search better, I'll save them an hour a day, for sure, before I even look at any other literacy stuff. But I'm very, very happy 33 minutes because I've got a stat out there. You know, use those things. So this, of course, they're saying 33 minutes of productive time a day. So don't make a mistake. No one's going home early. It doesn't work like that. You're going to just do more work. But based on that, so based on the fact that I'm saying 70 saying 33 minutes, I then took the following data set. Now, please understand, I worked here on average freaking rands. You can, of course, go and slot this in on your own. And, of course, the stats will pretty much nearly work out the same. I mean, the difference is not going to be that much. I worked on a small business with about 35 employees, okay? And I worked on average salaries from let's say, lowest salary, right? I'm saying executive. But to give you an idea, Juicy, that executive salary that I loaded there is definitely about it's about a quarter of what executives bottom luck executives actually earn. So I didn't use high salaries. I used very low average mark so that people could get the idea. So I took 35 people. I took average salaries in a company, and that's $1 million, what we call ZAR a month. And took that, remember that statistic I have about power users and self-learners, so that first slide, I deducted those guys. I said, let's take them out of the picture, and let's say we don't spend any money on training those guys. We're going to only focus on 69% of our users. The rest of them, we reckon we'll be able to sort them. Look at that 69% of the users. This is what that costs me per day, those 69%. That's what they cost me per hour. That's what they cost me per minute. These are scary stats when you start running these, of course. Now, if I take that 68 Rand 45, whichever your currency would be, remember I found that statistic that said I could possibly save you 33 minutes of productive time a day. So I'm going to just stick to that. So I'm saying that I could save the people 69% of my workforce that earns that per minute. I can save 33 minutes of that. And that then brings me back to what that possible saving could be. So that brings me to 570,000 possible productivity saving in a year. And this is what you need for ROI calculation. You need the possible return on your investment, of course. So what is it that you're going to get back? What is the gain that you're going to get back? 570,000 is 33 minutes of 69% of my users. That's how I got to that. And now if I take that, if I work out the return on investment, the calculation then, if you look at that, we're saying, and I did a really rough estimate, yeah, I worked on quite expensive stats. I said a one-day PC literacy course for 25 people, because remember, 69% of that 35 users are 25 people, this small little company. If I had to train 25 people and I did 8 people in a course, so that's 3 days, and I worked at 20,000 ZAR a day, and I can promise you it's about half that cost, actually, to be honest, then my training cost for those people for PC literacy would be 60,000. Now, to then get the ROI, I have to go and look at what the possible saving is per year. And, of course, there's my possible productivity of 33 minutes a year divided by my training cost, and that gives you your ROI. Now, I don't know when's the last time you saw ROI on a project, but I've never seen ROIs like that on projects. We normally look at ROIs of 150 or maybe 200%. But to get a 950% ROI on investing back in your employees, I think is a massive gain. So this, I'd gladly, maybe we, like I said, we can set up a blog post afterwards just to recap that. So we said that was the company's salaries per month. That's 33 minutes per day saving if you take it for a year. And the training cost is approximately 60,000 ZAR. So that's an ROI of 950%, which is definitely a very big ROI. And of course, I don't want to forget about that. It's not just about the saving time. It's that empowered employees are, of course, less likely to leave your company, and this saves quite a lot of money too. This is a little gem that you added for us. So so just at the end, yes, Juicy, handing over to you.
Yeah, so, Henry Ford said this I think it's quite a famous quote. The only thing worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training them and having them stay.
Absolutely.
But I feel this is happening on a daily basis everywhere. So it's actually pretty bad out there how companies are handling end-user training. I mean, there's obviously a training budget that users can get per year, but with the classroom training, it's the problem that get the classroom training done, and if you don't really use what you have learned within the next couple of weeks, you will get 80% of that what you have learned in the training. So
Absolutely.
it's time to change the way how to train end users.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's not working anymore.
Yeah, true story. Yeah, so I think that kind of brings us towards the end of wrapping up, and I think this is both of us just chatting about training methods and, of course, what the purpose is of training. And my first slide was just very quickly touching base. I'm not going into too much information, but about what the types of mediums is that you can use. So from my side, I just added blogs, videos, quick reference guides, manuals, classroom or online training, emails, pamphlets, and posters, and then just-in-time training or real-time training, which has become very popular these days, of course. And we can, of course, just add on to those as well. But if I think of the different mediums, for me, there's a very big focus on what it is that we're trying to achieve. There could be initial PC literacy training. This is not something that should be happening all the time. This is us going back and fixing a problem that already exists. So the PC literacy or digital literacy training is very important for me. And of course, we can have training for new solutions as well. So that's more of a awareness training, and that might be with pamphlets or booklets that gets handed out, or posters that gets put up, etc. And then, of course, there's the great just-in-time training, which is training and resources that we think is available while it is that you're actually busy doing the task that you need to do, or you're busy trying to achieve what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Cool.
Yeah, so about training methods, Tracy, what have you been discovering so far in your line of work? What do customers still do nowadays? I mean, what is the thing with the customers?
Yeah. If people still prefer that classroom, sit down, have a thick book that gets printed type of training, and what I've seen, what's a problem with that training, because of course we all need training at some point, depending on what it is that you have to accomplish. But the problem with that training is that as soon as that user goes back to his normal environment, he then ends up not remembering what it is that was covered in the training. So I've been looking at that for a couple of years and saying, how is it that I can actually change that, and how can we make this easier? And if I think, for example, in SharePoint, what I did years ago, and I'm really seeing some great things coming up that I think will be a great asset. But what I started doing was to add the manuals on the SharePoint site, so that at least if they're in SharePoint, you know, there's a link there that goes to the library with all the manuals. But still the problem for me with that is I have to stop doing the work that I'm busy doing, and then I have to go and open a manual and find what it is that I'm looking for. So even though that training is great for me, when it comes to teaching people new solutions and things, I do feel that it's very difficult for those people to apply that to the environment that they work in every day, because they see it as separate, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, that's also what I have noticed, that still what is the issue with most training systems, that they are disconnected from the working context where the users are.
Yes.
And that is kind of a rift between the learning and the working. And this causes problems in terms of user adoption, in terms of user acceptance, in terms of actually learning. So people learn by doing. They actually learn best when they do stuff, when they try out things, when they fail forward, when they fail even more, and at some point they get it. When they get it, then actually this kind of upward spiral works is happening when the users start to learn more and more and more, and faster and faster and faster. So
I think the cool thing about that as well, Juicy, is that it saves time, because in the industry these days, I mean, time is money. It always has been, right? But people don't have time anymore to take a half day off and first go and learn how to do a couple of things before we launch an intranet, for example. So having products that helps us to learn in environments like that, of course, it's just a great way. It's something that saves money, but it also is much easier for the user, because they can work in the production environment and have the tools that's ready to actually help them.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's so I don't know if you want to add more on the types of training, but I do think that this brings us to a very interesting topic that we've been chatting about quite a lot. If you're ready to move across, Juicy, I'm going to share my screen. So I think there's something really cool that we'd like to share with everyone on the call. If you have a minute or two, I'd like to just backtrack those slides. The fact that it didn't go through on the webinar, I'd like to just go through that calculation again. And just so everyone, I wasn't aware that it stayed on that slide, but there we go. So I'm going to just hand over to you for a moment, Juicy, and you can just maybe talk us through a couple of things.
Okay, so what we see here is a screen of a tool called TrainingGage, where you can actually bring learning content directly to the working context where you are. So when you, for instance, look at the intranet site or a new process, you can actually go click and find little topics and hints on the elements what you see directly on the site. So it stays within the context of the site you're looking at. And TrainingGage also helps not only with just showing context-based information, but also in click-by-click walkthroughs. So for instance, you could teach a user how to upload the document, or how to add a new app to a SharePoint slide, for instance, or how a certain process is working by default. So that means with the help of TrainingGage, you can actually help end users from the very first start when they look really at the fresh new application or at the fresh new internet. And it also helps them over a longer time period when you want to keep users engaged with learning and further learning their contents, further learning about the products. And actually, TrainingGage has this concept of player-based content. So actually, end users themselves can create learning content for the others, and it's very, very easy. So for instance, switch off the TrainingGage control on the below.
I just want to show something quickly. So if I open a new tip, now remember this can be text or a link to a video or a document, but if I've read a tip, I can actually say that I've got it, and you'll see that it adds up here at the bottom. So it's like a mini little LMS system, which is quite cool. It says how many of the tips on the page I've actually accessed and read. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm going to just switch off.
Yeah, it's kind of a feedback loop which shows the end user how much they have discovered on this site. It's a small gamification element. So maybe you know it from LinkedIn. When you don't fill in your profile, it always says to you that, hey, you've done 80%. And with humans, we like to have things completed. And
Absolutely,
this is
absolutely.
a small motivator to end users to actually go and look at all the contents.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. So I've switched off that that little help tool,
Yeah.
and I can see here on the left bottom corner, start configuring hotspots.
Yeah, so when you click that one, then it switches into recording mode. And with the recording mode, you see this inspect element, what you can apply or attach to any element you see on the website. So when you right click on that, you can add this so-called hotspots. We call them hotspots. Single hotspots,
Okay.
you can just add or append content to a certain element on your website. So it's very, very easy to do. You can add text, you can add images, you can embed videos, or you can embed anything which has an embed code, basically. So very, very flexible. Yeah. And here
so these as well.
Yeah. So sticky auto open. That means if it's sticky, you really need to click on the checkbox on the below right corner to actually close the hotspot. And with auto open, it will automatically open once you activate Train Engage. So this is for something if you really want to bind something under the user's nose.
When something's new.
Yes.
That's perfect.
And of course, this helps as well if you have like communications in the intranet and you really want to address something for the end users. And some users might be in holidays when the communications come out. When users come back, they can go and look at or Train Engage will actually notify them, hey, go look at this news article. It's actually really important to see. So it can really be a guidance tool for the users for processes, but also to find certain things within an application.
Okay. I'm going to save this one. I'm going to just switch off the configuring again. I quickly want to see. So if I switch this on again, something I noticed when I switch it on, do you guys see this come there? So remember something that's set to automatically come up if this is one of those pop-ups, but you'll see that I now have a little hotspot there, and if I click on that, so I'll just close this. It then tells me click here to settings, etc. And I mean that's how easy it is to actually add this. It's a pretty cool tool, I have to admit. I'm super impressed by this.
And the thing is that now this hotspot, it looks a bit that it's in the middle of something, so you can basically just drag and drop it around in the recording mode. So it's also you can position them always different.
Yes.
Yeah, and also if an element moves around, it is not pinned on a coordinate grid. It is really connected to the certain model, the DOM model of this element inside.
Oh, I see the specific zone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
This is some tool which can help user adoption with end users, especially in the beginning. In the beginning, when they start using a new tool or a new process, or if they have something like expenses reports, which they need to fill in, some a bit less, some a bit more. But always when you need to fill them in, it's always very urgent to have them filled in. And if you don't know how the process goes, then a tool like Train Engage can ad hoc help you with the way how this tool is actually working. And you are still you're still productive while Train Engage teaches you how to do it.
Yeah, I thought I would just, if you start looking at questions, thought I'd just quickly the calculation again. You can see the calculation on my screen now, right?
Yeah.
I think it wasn't displaying right earlier on. This was just my 35. I'm going to just recap it very quickly. It was my 35 users, and I took 69% of them. I worked out what they cost me per day. I then took that and I times it by the 33 minutes that they could be more productive, of course, to work out what my benefit could be from training these users from 70,000. Now, if I take that cost, and this was just a bit I wanted to share again, if I look at the cost of PC literacy training and I work at 20,000 a day and I train for 3 days, cost would be 60,000 Rand. So if I look at that 570,000 Rand benefit from doing this, and I divide it by the training cost, and that's I get my answer to show that to the guys again, so that they can just have a better understanding. But like I said, we'll definitely share this afterwards in a blog as well, for you guys to actually get the calculations. And the different mediums we speak about, and of course, there's the purpose of the training. And that's me running through a lot of craziness. It was interesting, this webinar, because last time you had technical difficulties, and look at me having a blue screen in a webinar, a lot of but yes.
Yeah, but you recovered really, really quick. It was amazing. I think if I would have a blue screen,
that was easy.
If I would have a blue screen,
incredible.
The laptop would fly somewhere.
No, that was incredible. That was with a reboot and a Windows update and a blue screen, and yeah, that was really, really incredible. Yeah. Any questions more on your side? Anything that you wanted us to just recap on, Juicy?
I cannot see any more questions in the chat. So yeah, I think we are through with this one.
Okay, cool.
So I have nothing more to add at this stage. I think we can look for next year what else we want to do in terms of community activity, in terms of webinars, what other topics we want to talk about. As said, there was a request from Andy Talbot for the collab show of 365 to have a show on user adoption.
Yes.
So I will get in touch with Andy later on and see what other shows we can have on this channel as well.
And maybe what we can do, maybe that will be the easiest, is that we can just save and upload this presentation to SlideShare, if that works for you.
Sure, we can do that.
You know, the document itself as well. So not just the video, but the document, so that people can go and look at the calculations.
Okay, good. All right.
Cool. Well, everything's good my side. I'm very, very sorry about the technical glitch that we had, but we tend to rock those things, it seems. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much, Josie. That training gauge really looks very cool. I'd definitely like to mess around a bit more with it and do some more tests on it. So quite keen to look at that product. I think it's something that really, really can add value and can help people to get training where they need it, which I think is what we need.
Okay, great. Be our guest.
Cool. Thank you very, very much. And that's joined us as well. Thank you, Josie. Thank you, Asta.
Thank you
for arranging this.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.